Breaking the cycle to step forward. Authentic conversations from lived experience and a professional perspective in overcoming abuse with Chris Tuck and Beverley Ann.
Hello and welcome to Breaking the Cycle to Step Forward. I'm Beverley Ann and joined as ever by the lovely...
Hi everyone, Chris Tuck here. Hope you're all well.
And today we've got another wonderful guest. And today it's actually, are you going to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course I will. I'm Fatima Whitbread. I'm a former international athlete. I'm also have lived experience in the children's homes for 14 years. And yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to chatting with you girls and share a bit more about myself.
Fantastic. And there is something as well that we want to share personally. And Chris is probably going to kill me now because when we spoke about you coming on the show, what was it you said, Chris? Who was it who inspired you?
Idol when I was growing up, because I used to do a lot of running to get my anger out of my system. And whenever I watched athletics, you would be one of my idols that I would watch and think, that looks good. And I tried javelin and I was absolutely hopeless. I stuck to the running.
You stabbed yourself in the foot, did you?
So what I did, I went to throw it, and instead of going anywhere, it just went, ooh, duh.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it, you know, Chris, isn't there? It's not until you pick up a javelin you realise actually it's one of the most beautiful events that you can watch in the stadium from all around the stadium, aesthetically. But at the same time, it's one of the most technical events, so it's much harder. Anything that's done to perfection looks easy. But believe you me, there's a lot of hard work that goes into that.
And you made it look easy. Thanks, Bev. Carry on.
Well, that's what's lovely about these conversations, because it's, you know, anyone listening as well. It's about how you connect with each other. And so it's important. So Fatima, would you like to just go back and, for some of the listeners who don't know, just give us a little bit of a run through about your childhood and how you came through to adulthood?
Yes, well, I was abandoned as a baby, and some would say left to die in a flat in London. And a neighbour had heard a baby crying for a couple of days, but hadn't seen anybody come or go to the flat. So she called the police, who then in turn came and banged the door down and rescued the baby, which was myself. I then spent the next 6 months in hospital recovering from malnutrition and nappy rash. And then during that period, I was made a ward of court through Hackney Borough Council. And I spent the next 14 years of my life in children's homes. So it's quite a long time to be incarcerated in care. But at the same time, obviously, I never had anybody explain anything to me. And back in the 60s, it was quite bleak to what the times are now. And it was a long old time, 14 years in the care system.
Yes, and that's something I can equate with you, as in, because I was under court order through Bromley Council. So, but I was 4 when I went in, and I had siblings as well. Right. I went to 2 different children's homes and was fostered. And I will say, even though it is challenging, for me, it was the best thing, because the choice of being at home was toxic. It was awful and it wasn't good. But for yourself, Fatima, do you have a home, you know, growing up out of that experience that was one of your best, or one that...
Life, if you ask me now, would I change anything about my childhood? I would say maybe a couple of things. All right, so obviously the sexual abuse and the sheer abandonment and trauma, emotional trauma that it left me with. And for a lot of children, that's always very hard to process, particularly from a very young age. So even now, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm over it. We all have to learn to deal with it and learn to how to do the healing. And I often used to take the young Fatima by the hand even today, and I'll say to her, come on, you're fine, I've got you, you know, you're safe now. And that is so important to understand, that as we get older, we have that responsibility ourselves to heal. And even though our primary care years, and I felt these were stolen from me to a certain extent, and you know, the trauma that I lived through, not just my own, but also the other children in the care system. There were somewhat 25 kids in the first children's home, and you know, that's hard because you've got everyone crying for mummy and wanting to, you know, why is it we're left here? We're all sort of, nothing was ever explained to me. Nobody ever said, you know, your mummy's going to be visiting, and or you know, had a special cards or birthday, you know, visits. There was nothing to indicate that I had a family out there. So it was quite a shock to me. I mean, when being told, you know, that at the age of 5, I was called by the house matron to say, Fatima, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, be outside downstairs by the front door. Your mother is coming to take you to a new children's home with your childcare officer to be with your half brother and sister.
Wow.
Thought, wow, that's a lot, you know, for a 5-year-old, because I mean, this was my home. I started to worry all night, thinking, why am I leaving the place I know? And this is my friends and they're my family. And, you know, what's going to happen to me? I was already panicking anyway, because at 5, you start to, you know, you pick up vibration. You definitely can have a very good intuition about what's going on around you. And, you know, it was just, none of it felt right to me, you know, from the words they go. And I can remember, like a lot of the children, we used to play in the front room, and we used to watch anybody coming in and out of the driveway. And I always used to say, is that my mummy coming to get me?
Yeah.
I mean, this is the thing with children. They have their own perception, how they deal with life to get them through. And, you know, for a lot of young kids, I mean, it's very difficult to process anything like that. You know, unless they're actually sat down and sort of given, you know, some sort of huddle and understanding that why they're there and reassurance. You know, it's just very difficult.
And it's you know, going back to the children home days, it's amazing when I look back as an adult and hearing you speak and other people, you just accepted it. You don't know any different. You just accepted, and to have your name called out and being told this is going to happen, that was the norm, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, there was 25 children in that home, and I mean, I always remember there was always massive queues for the bathroom. I mean, if you weren't smart enough to get in the front of the queue when it was bath day, then you'd got at the end of the queue. Then you were unfortunate. It was cold, murky, mucky water. And yeah, you soon learn to swim or sink, as it were. But nevertheless, you know, there was a lot of young children walking around, sleepwalking, basically, because they were all just emotional, traumatized, you know. And I found it really difficult in some respects to get above that. And that made it a lot harder, because whereas you could have perhaps have got on, which you see residentials today at maximum sometimes 4 children in a home. It's so different. It's more homely than having large numbers, and kids coming and going all the time. Starting point all the same, very emotionally, wetting the beds, rocking themselves to sleep, crying themselves to sleep. And you know, that's just very tough to deal with, because it kicks you off every time, you know. And I did learn how to deal with it, because I was very fortunate with having an auntie in my second home, Auntie Ray. And I don't know if you've heard me speak of Auntie Ray. She was a 72-hour lady, and she was a Cockney girl, and we used to call her the tickle monster, because Auntie Ray would always get us up in the morning by tickling us. So I always used to lay under the bed sheets and hide under there, and I'd just wait there until she came and tickled me. So it's just as well she did, Beverley. I'd still be there now. Yeah. And she humanized us kids, you know. Yes. And that was what's so important, to have that bright shining star in your life, somebody who you can connect to. For young people, that's key. That's having a good role model, somebody they can look up to, you know, they know who's seen them and got them, you know, and understands them, they values and understands what that child's going through, because it makes a huge difference to that child's life moving forward.
And we had that with Auntie Anne. So even Christmas, you know, most of the children, there was 18 in our first children's home. Most of them would go home. So it'd just been me and my siblings there. But if she was working that day, I've still got fabulous memories of actually being allowed in her bedroom.
Oh wow,
And-
we never allowed to do that, were we?
Exactly. Like I went into that area and sat on the bed, and we had a little stocking to, you know, and those are things that we take, you know, I did it for my children. As children, you think, doesn't everyone do that? No,
Well,
you don't in care homes.
most conventional families, I mean, yeah, it was called unconditional love, and what children are, they have the privilege of having the attention of mum and dad all the time, and it's lovely. That's what it should be for our children, and they get the unconditional love, as I say, and they get the support through their primary care years, and through their education, through their friendships. Also, the fact that there's obviously skill them up for their adulthood, and so when they go out into the big wide world, they're actually able to stand on their feet. Whereas that's not most children's experience in the care system, and it's really, I think, very difficult to explain that to people, and I'm very fortunate, like you. I mean, I'm able to, through my lived experience, and using my Olympic platform, I'm able to relate and emphasize with the public, just to educate them what these young children in the UK are going through, because they have massive challenges, of many of which has a real profound impact on their outcomes in life. And I'm really keen to call for change. That sorry,
an anachronism in England.
Mum,
see, Chris, that you've got your hand up as well.
I have.
Sorry.
It's all right. So we're just sorting out. What was that? Was it a book or something that was speaking to itself?
Yeah, my mum. I've got my mum with me today, and my adoptive mum, and my mum's not very techie, so she's looking at some stuff on my laptop, and she's managed to find herself in hole with some ad of some sort. Yeah, she's all.
Maggie, behave yourself.
Not me, it's the laptop.
It's not.
So I was just going to.
Says no.
I was going to pick up on some parallels for, you girls were in the care system. I wasn't. I almost wished I was in the care system. Growing up in a dysfunctional, violent, chaotic household, the parallels for waiting for a parent to turn up. When mum, for example, had custody of us, and we're waiting for dad to turn up because he promised he would come and he didn't turn up, time and time again, it's the letdown, which is so crushing to children and young people, that people outside of that don't really get to understand that it is truly crushing when you're waiting for someone that you think loves you and cares for you and doesn't turn up. And also, Fatima, I don't know if you know, but I worked at the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse for 8 years. So that's all about change. It's all about trying to impact policy, trying to get new laws implemented, all of that kind of thing. And when we did like the public hearings into sexual abuse and abuse in general within children's homes, it broke my flipping heart about how many children were not only harmed further, but were let down, and even to this day are still being abused within those kind of environments, those institutional environments. And that is what we are here collectively doing, is raising awareness that it's, one, it's going on, two, it's prevalent, and three, it's not okay, and having that one person, as you said, your auntie Fatima, and Beverley had an auntie. I had that one person in my life when I was 15 that helped me on the right road. If she hadn't stepped in and was my shining light, I don't know how my life would have turned out. But she helped me get into education. She helped me sort out my housing situation, and that got me, it wasn't easy, as we all know, but that got me on my road. So it's really important that every single child and young person has that one person in their lives that can help.
Role models so important. The role model is so important. And what really annoys me, there's a couple of things here, right? And we know that there's 4.2 million families that are living in poverty as we speak, and the food banks, 800,000 families on the food banks. I mean, this era, this time in our lifetime, there should never really be that many people suffering, and of course the 33% of all councils are seeing a weekly increase of children coming into the care system. So that's no surprise, is it, with austerity as it is?
Yeah.
And of course 33%, this is where I'm getting to my point, 33% of under 20-year-olds, all of under 20-year-olds who are incarcerated are from the care system. And that's largely due because they're being groomed. Most of them are being groomed by the undesirables to do their dirty work. And these young carers, the young children, they're the ones that are, sorry, because somebody's trying to ring me, and that's modern technology for you as well, isn't it? Yeah,
we're authentic here. We go with the flow.
Yeah, and so what my point is here is that we need to address that. We need to get those in severe the young girls as well that are very vulnerable, and they're getting targeted by these undesirables, again, no better than paedophilias, and they're the ones that should be put in behind bars, the ones that are taking advantage of our young vulnerable kids, because at the end of the day they know exactly what they're doing. They're targeting our young people. A lot of our young children need more. And this is where Fatima's UK campaign is coming into play, because one of the things that I want to introduce is what I call the power of sport, or the power of arts, and where we work in collaboration with partnerships to bring in, I'm working with the Premier League at the moment with this CEO of Safeguarding, to bring some important projects together for our young people, so they have a sense of belonging somewhere, so they can go on a weekly basis, do sport, learn about life skills, connecting, work, fulfilling their, making it, giving them potential, and giving them a sense of fulfillment and confidence, and also working with the local police or fire brigades in their community as well, being amongst them, so they can understand who these children are, and the children understand and build a working relationship with the police as more of a friendly face. And that I think is far kinder in building a happier lives, better communities, and a nicer kind of society. But the projects that I'm trying also to introduce through Fatima's campaigns is also, I've been talking to John Pierce, who's the corporate director of children's councils, and I would like to get him to ring fence these projects so that they protected from cross-party, but they last, give it longevity, because that's so important that these kids can get to, for future generations as well. And the projects, if unfortunately, I mean, this is another pet hate of mine, when the kids get moved so many times out of an area, and I will talk to John about this, because it's time that more councils took up more residential homes, because I think that not all children want to go into foster care. It doesn't always suit them. They might have a family, but they're in an area where they get moved out because there are not enough children's homes, where our councils need to invest more in owning their own residentials, rather than sending them across to another county or halfway down the country, way away from all their friends, from their families, or basically people that they've been with and known for a long time. So it's disruptive, it's unsettling, and there's no continuity, because they might be there for a short period of time and move on again. But what this project does is allow them, wherever they go, to tap in. Their details are on the Safeguarding data system. It's protected, but it also gives that child still the continuity of being able to be a part of something.
And Fatima, that's something that's really close to my heart, because for some people listening, being in children's homes seems like the worst scenario, and for me and for my siblings, although I can't speak on their behalf of their whole experience, but for me particularly, being in care, I am proud that I was in care. I am the woman I am today because of the women, and it was mostly women, that looked after me. I remember when I was 10, being in the children's home for 6 years, very happy, was being sent home regularly, and nobody had asked any questions. So we were under court order for neglect. But unfortunately, when the police came to take us away at the age of 4, my father had already started abusing me. So I was still being sent home, but still being able to go back to a safe place. So at the age of 10, when it's suddenly like, oh, you're going to be home in time for Christmas, you're all going to be together, all 6 siblings together with your mum and dad going forward. This is going to be your forever home. For 3 nights, I had night terrors. It was like, I didn't have the language to say why I didn't want to go home.
No,
but
you were too young.
Too young. But I also, there was a part of me that wanted to be part of a normal family, because
natural.
Yeah, and the worst thing is about being in care for me, when I look back as well, is the way you get labelled. So you're as a child, as a child, you're placed in care for safety. So, but the question, I don't know if you had this, but growing up, if anyone learnt that I was in care, the first question, what did you do?
Yeah, exactly. Everyone sort of naturally assumes that these children are in there for, because they've been naughty. And, to be honest, I mean, they're in there through no fault of their own. And a lot of them have been abused physically, mentally, sexually. I was all of those, like you. And I found it very hard as well to share that with anybody, because you do get discriminated against. Back then it was. Now we look at inclusion and we look for early intervention, which is really key. But back then there was none of that. Children should be seen and not heard. It was our motto. And you didn't say anything to anybody when you were sexually abused. I mean, that living with that terror, and the fact that it's just, you feel bad that it's your fault, that there's something that's gone wrong. I mean, it's soul destroying, and it's really hard to explain that to people unless they've actually been in that situation themselves. But it's hard to looking forward now. I mean, obviously, looking at children as we are today, as I said, I think it's really key that 2 things. One, if they are going into foster care, we need to, look at 2 areas here. Firstly, we've got to be sure that those that want to do the job are doing it for the right reason, not just for the money, because it's not desirable to have children being shunted about from one place to another. It's totally unsettling and
heartbreaking.
And then secondly, those that have got genuine heart and they want to open their home to the love of a child, then they need to have a bit more support, especially in terms of trauma, because that is something that not everybody understands. Not everyone has experienced what trauma is about. And these children, as I said, they come in with a particular set of circumstances, like issues, and trauma is, and triggers are 2 of the most, profound ones. And I think that if we help to skill up some of the foster carers with regard to that, then they will much be easier to recognise what's coming at them or what's happening, and try to deal with it better, and therefore less breakdowns in the relationship with the foster child, and
absolutely.
And there is a third one where because there are a lot of misconceptions built around foster care, and I think a lot of them is all bullshit. Forgive me to say it, because for one, you can, I mean, if you're single, you can still foster. 2, if you're disabled, you can still foster. 3, if you're same sex, that's fine too. They're going to be seriously vetted. All foster parents are. And the other one is, for any child that goes into care, obviously, the most important thing is to have the love and security of that family. And that means embrace that child as your own. Don't assume that when you go on holiday, you can only take your kids and leave them in care somewhere, because what sort of message is that giving to that child? And that, I think, is a breakdown of communication, and that's the start of the rot setting in. And that's why a lot of children then feel that they don't want to be a part of the family, because they don't feel the part of the family. It's okay to do. They feel it's okay to do the job and earn the money, but when it comes to the finer things, which family holidays, which families have, then you've got to embrace that with that child too.
And that, you know, let's be honest, it's very hard. I've been a foster child as well, and you know, now I can look back and see it from both sides, from my side, but also from their side, where they had the best intentions, but they didn't have, you know, their expectation. I was older than their son, so why didn't I know how to do naturally what their son knew? Like the boundaries in the family, and I had no idea.
Well, because you never had them in your environment that you lived in the first place, and that's a lot to do with, you know, again with children's environment in childcare. You know, with the a lot of them are living in the families that unfortunately the parents are not always well enough to look after them properly. And I know that I've had little girls talk to me about when I've gone to residentials to visit and talk to them, how happy they are to be able to be sleeping in a bed. You know, and then one of them also said to me, I was so proud to show me her shoes. She said, because my sister and I, my mummy couldn't afford 2 pair of shoes, so we took it in turns to go to school. You know, and these are the things we take for granted. When I say we, I mean conventional families take for granted that these children are facing tough challenges today. You know, and you know, it would make for a much happier society if we all sort of work together, and that the awareness was out there that these children, they should have been more inclusive. Stigmatization should be taken away, you know, and early intervention with families would be much more successful, you know, in having a happier family as a family unit, you know.
And Chris, you know, this is where that it brings full circle. When you think of, you know, when we all share our story, people think, oh, that's years ago. But when you talk about poverty, etc., Chris, this is where, like, for you, you've always said you wished you could go back into care because you wanted that safety, didn't you? You wanted that regularity.
That sounds like also, Chris, when people go into prison, these young kids, what happens is, I'm sorry for jumping in, but this is making my point perfectly. A lot of kids, right, when they've been in prison, they then realise when they come out, they've not got any family, they've got nobody around them. So they then re-offend because they want to go back because that is their family. They've got a warm cell, they've got regular food, they've got the inmates, and that's their family. They want to be back inside. And that's a real shame. You know,
that's their sense of belonging, isn't it? It's their sense of safety, sense of belonging, which we wouldn't understand unless we're in their shoes. Can I just go back a little bit, because I'm listening to you, fabulous conversation, so I tend to go and pick up again and thread it on. So cost of living crisis, every time we have this, domestic violence goes up, child sexual abuse goes up, abuse in general just goes up. That is what research shows us. So obviously then we have more mental health issues for children, young people and adults. We have more addiction. We have more and more and more dysfunction. So essentially then, if you move it forward, there's more children and young people being moved into the care system, whatever that care system looks like. Now, Fatima, you said that we need to move back to more local authority care, but there was a move away from that, wasn't there? Because it wasn't meeting the needs of children and young people.
Well,
so what is the thing?
Why I say that, right? Why I say that, Chris, is because when children come into care, I think they need to go into a safe haven, and having their own residential, the council's owning their own residential, gives them that opportunity to assess the child and talk to the child and ask them what it is that they themselves would like. Because not every child, as I say, wants to go into other families. Some of them feel like they'll be much better suited to residential and still having connection with outside family. But they won't know that unless they actually talk to the kids. And I think this is an opportunity for them to own their own homes and to do that, monitor that system within their own boundaries. If they have no residential homes, what a lot of councils are doing now is buying residential places off the private sector, people that have bought the houses and selling them at high price, and it makes no sense whatsoever wasting all that money to buying and sending a child from one end of the country to another, completely out their remit, away from anyone they know and family, if they have got family. And it's just a complete waste of money, and it makes no sense to me. And that's why they keep getting punted around from pillar to post. And like West, if they have their own, councils go back to owning their own properties and residentials. They can bring children in. I mean, now residentials, and no, Beverley and I, we experienced it with quite high volumes of children in homes. Nowadays it's usually about 4, and it's like a little family unit. They have 2 to 1, I think, carers in there. Everything's done, and they can learn how to live properly out like a family. And some of them feel much more secure in that environment than they would in being, if they've already had experienced emotional trauma in a family. But you know, regardless what they make the decision at the end of the day, once they've been monitored and you know, they've had the chance to find out what that child wants, then they can make the decision whether they go further afield in terms of family foster care, or whether they keep them in residential. You know, it's but if they haven't got residential, they then, like I said, they will spend an absolute fortune, you know, in buying a place way out the remit, which makes, again, no sense, as I said earlier, and it's a complete waste of money. Why aren't they buying their own residential homes, and why aren't they taking it under their own umbrella and controlling the situation themselves, and integrating that child, keeping stability and continuity for that child in the area that it belongs?
And I can answer that one. Why? Because it comes, their argument is it comes under finance again. So I've been in the House of Lords as a member of the Institute of Recovery of Childhood Trauma, and this was before lockdown. And back then we had someone giving some figures out, and the figures that they were sharing with us was that at that time was that for each child to be in residential care, they'd worked it out in a borough that it cost annually over £300,000 for that child to be in residential care, and yet when they were being fostered, they worked it out to be 30,000. And I was one of the first people, when they said any questions, I jumped up and I said, can you clarify that, please? I said, because any person doing the budgets would think, oh, let's go and foster because financially it's cheaper. I said, but you've also spoken about the training and the support for the staff in the residential homes. Where's the training and the support for the foster homes? And I think that's what's happened. We've got too many people looking at the money. But we need to look long-term financially, because
you've got to look at the welfare of the child and its outcomes, best outcomes emotionally. You know, then what their needs are, and not as a number, and what and how much can they save.
And but I believe also they don't save. Because for each child where they're trying to save money, look at the outcomes. They've been often taken away from parents because the parents are no pointing finger, but they were unable for whatever reason to look after them and support them. And yet, once they've gone through the care system, there is no support. So naturally, you go back to your parents
you
for a bit of support. And I mean, I did for a little while. And
but then a lot of our kids don't. They get, either because they can't continue with paying the bills, they end up homeless, they end up in crime, they end up sexually abused and groomed. You know, they're very vulnerable kids. They're very, you know, I don't know. I mean, it begs to differ why they haven't got, you know, much more clarity about the importance of, you know, it would, to me, for a lot of young children, again, I'd rather put them in boarding school, give them a good education, know that they're getting well looked after and got security, but they've got a good outcome at the end of it. For those that do want education, that's the best. That's, I think, a best plan of action as well. Giving them the opportunity of staying in boarding schools, you know, taking their education aboard. They're getting the security and people around them looking after them. And they come out with, at the end of the day, with an education, something they can stand up on their own feet and you know, pay their way through life. Isn't that all what we all want to do, you know?
And socially, when you've been through boarding school, no matter what's happening in your family, the message is very different. There's no labelling, no prejudice.
No labelling, exactly.
Chris, your hand is up, I can see.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to your points, girls, on the foster carers and them not having the specific training. And any of my friends who have gone into fostering, when they speak to me, because they know what I do, they say that they often get given children that are traumatized. They're not given the history of the children. And then they're working with children and their behavior, and they know that the child has got trauma because they're not being told about the history and the background, so they're obviously picking up on the behavior. And then when they seek support to help with the child, to keep the child on the straight and narrow and with the help and support that that child needs, they're not being given it. The foster carers aren't. So there is a big gap in what the child needs and what the foster carers can provide, because they're not getting the appropriate help and support by the local authorities or whoever is responsible for the training of foster carers. So I wanted to pick up.
Yeah, go on.
I wanted to pick up on that point. Yeah.
I hear everything you're saying, and I don't disagree. But I also see that if we have children, when I'm a mum, so I was desperate to break the mold of what happened to me, and I'm sure Beverley and most people that have been in that situation like yourself, we all want to do that, don't we? We all want to show our families that, you know, we're good parents, and I'd like to think I have done that. But, you know, I mean, personally, if that was me, I would be saying to my child, or the child that I was looking after, these are the fundamental things that you do for humanity. You find that person within you to deal with that, and not everyone wants to, because if it's not their child, they think, why should I? And it requires an immense amount of effort and commitment. And again, you're relying on somebody who's got that big heart to do that. And there are ways of combating this with the children, because with children, it's always about giving them hope. And if they've got hope, they will succeed. And the point is, they've got to feel that somebody's got their back, and they feel secure on that subject. And having something that they can relate to or associate with, they enjoy doing, like a passion. I mean, it makes them grow as people. Self-growth is immense, you know, and then what it does for you. And then it takes you through different doors and down different corridors, and you learn through different experiences how to deal with certain situations, and you grow as a person. And that is the key thing, I think, to breaking away from what your childhood primary years have developed you as, into going into adulthood. And I think that a lot of people out there need to take a bit more time with these young people, even in their own families. They might find that they're struggling with their kids, but take that time to find what it is that you can inspire and make your child responsible for taking on. Because once they find what it is that they love to do or they have a passion for, you usually find that, you know, that combats a lot of mental health issues. Because the biggest thing when kids get stuck in their mind, and adults, they become mentally, physically not feeling well. And the problem is, you know, we can't throw tablets. That's like sticking a band-aid on the problem and not really getting to the point of what it is causing in the first place. So it is all about learning to get to the bottom with kids of what it is that they feel that they would ideally like themselves, and where they see themselves best in terms of how they can see themselves flourishing and growing, you know, and not forgetting, but dealing with the healing process, which is basically what we're talking about here with young kids. The you know, the best healing of all, you know, it's like the farmer who lived in Singapore or wherever, and he every day he used to get up and he'd go on his farm and he'd look after his cows. And then one day he got up and there were no cows there, and he became quite ill because there was nothing for him to do, and he was like desperate. So he went to the doctors, and when the doctor said, "What's wrong?" and he said, "I've got this or that," and the doctor said, "Well, take these tablets." And one friend said, "No, give him a cow." And it's like giving him a cow got him back out there again, you know, on the trail of fulfillment, you know. And that's what it's about. It's not about taking just the medication. It's not about saying to someone, you've got a problem, this is your, most ailments stem from something, you know, and it's all about finding what that something is and then trying to address it. Yeah, it's really important, you know, that it's self-growth and you know, understand your self-healing and what works for you and makes you feel alive.
Absolutely. Chris.
Yes, my next question to Fatima, just to move it on a little bit, is how did you get into javelin, please?
Well, that's when I was in children's homes. I was constantly back in the 60s. I mean, I never liked, there was a lot of discrimination. Kids of us that when we used to go to school, we were all lined up with one auntie, and then we saw our friends with their mums and dads coming out of school, the same thing. School free dinners, none of that I liked because it was discriminating. And one of the things I used to do is play penny up the wall around the back of the bike shed. And I earned my school dinner that way. And my friend who lived in the children's home around the corner, her dinner money too. And if we didn't have enough, we'd go to the corner shop and we'd ask the old fish and chip lady, have you got any old scraps?
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? Yeah. And she'd often throw in a few chips as well. And then I'd say, oh, have you got any pickled onions? And she'd say, go on, cheeky. She'd throw it in there and she'd go on, clear off. but I started to learn that sport was my saviour. And I enjoyed sport because it gave me a sense of fulfillment. Again, it gave me a respect from my peers and my teachers. Instead of being wrapped around the knuckles with the ruler or got the chalkboard rubber thrown at me for talking in classroom, often, you know, I mean, I find it a struggle to concentrate on my work because emotionally I was very disturbed. And that's what happens with children that are very disturbed emotionally. They find it difficult to concentrate.
Yeah,
and
100%.
you know, and so, but sport gave me a sense of freedom, and it was, and I loved kicking ass around with the boys at football, you know, and showing them who's boss. I liked climbing up the biggest, hardest, difficult tree. I loved being, you know, throwing the cricket ball further than the boys in the school, you know, and it was the challenge and being looked upon as if somebody you achieving something and you were being shown respect, and that's why sport became my saviour. And that through sport, I met the love of the Whitbread family too, because my mum was a PE teacher, you know, and she wasn't in my school, but her school and my school had a very tough match playing netball, and I wanted to win the cup match, and it was like really strong. 2 contested teams. It was going 11-11, 12-11, 12 all, and I was raising my voice as captain, trying to motivate my team. And the whistle went, and the umpire said, "Young lady, keep that noise down, otherwise you'll be off." And I sort of looked, and I thought, "Who's this?" You know. So anyway, you do. Kids live in the homes. You're feisty. You've got to fight for your life all the time, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So when it was going 12 or 13, or, you know, and then I started making a noise. Back then, I mean, nowadays they'd call us motivators. And back then they call us pain in the arse, yeah? So the whistle went again, and she said, "I told you once before, if I've got to tell you again, you'll be off." And I kind of sort of muttered, and her team captain said, "Fats, she's really strict, be careful." Anyway, end of the match, we won, and that was great. Yay. Then my friend,
not that she remembers that match at all.
Yeah. That was the first medal I ever won in my whole career. And I remember then I wanted to join the athletic club, and I said to my friend Alma, who lived in the children's home around the corner, "Let's go to the local athletic club." And of course, it was from there on. I said, we walked 5 miles. I think we pocketed the bus money, probably got sweets or something like that. And Alma went off to the sprinters when we got there, and I saw this tall blonde boy throwing what looked like a spear, and I thought, "Oh, he's nice, I'll go over there." So I walked over to the runway, and I went to pick up the javelin, and he said, "You can't do that." So I said, "Why not?" So he looked to the javelin, the shot put coach behind, and Jack Green said to me, "Young lady, you'll have to wait in the stand for the javelin coach. That's, you know, you can't be throwing javelins without the javelin coach." So I thought, "Where's this javelin coach there?" So he said, "Come and sit in the stand." So I was sort of toe tapping, waiting in the stand, and then he said, "Oh, here comes the coach." And I'm looking, thinking, "Where's this coach?" And this little mini pulled up in the car park. And then as this person was walking across the field, I went, "Oh." No, it's that same woman on the netball court. Yeah.
No.
And I say, what are the chances? Yeah. And then when she got over to stay at the stand, Jack said, Mrs. Whitbread, I've got somebody here who would like to throw the javelin. And before he could say my name, she said, you're Fatima. She said, well, let me tell you, young lady, any of that cheek you showed on the netball court, you won't be throwing any javelins here. And that was the kind of like my introduction to Mrs. Whitbread. And yeah, there's an even bigger story that, and I won't take too much of your time with that because that goes on for quite some time. And eventually, you know, Mrs. Whitbread invited me to come to visit the family. And, you know, after that, it was, would you like to come and stay over the summer? And with regard to that, it was Greg, I think, my younger brother. I mean, the older brother, they're only 2 and 4, so they've only ever known me as Big Sis. And Greg said to my mum, do we have to take her back to the shop? And when my mum took me back to the house, she said, Mrs. Whitbread said, would you like to come and live with us? And I kind of like, what, really? So she said, yeah, well, you can come and live. So there was part of me that was excited because I've always ever wanted a family, but there was also part of me that was nervous because I'd been in children's homes for 14 years and Auntie Ray was my auntie and I wanted, you know, and all the children, my little family. And I just felt like I was abandoning them. And and it was like, and I was going to leave everything I ever knew. And it was like, oh, I don't know if I can handle this. But as it happened, it did. And mum and daughter and coach and athlete, we broke all the stadium records around the world and become world champion, world record holder, Olympian.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, so that's how I got into sport, girls.
And what's wonderful about hearing that, and thank you so much, is if anyone's listening, you know, what an inspiration. You know, and that is what you want to carry forward within your charity, isn't it? That's
what Fatima's UK campaign's about. It's giving these children the opportunity to fulfil them, reach their full potential as well. But they cannot do that if there's no such projects out there for them. And that's what I'm striving for, to get together in collaboration, working in partnerships, bringing these projects together, ring fencing them so they have longevity. Giving these children a sense of belonging, a place where they can go, they can enjoy their sport, they can enjoy meeting people in the community and working together as a little team. They can also skill up their selves if they want to, for, you know, to take better outcomes in terms of work later on. They can learn how to, you know, be put on the right path to be a physio, or if they want to be a mentor or just a coach even, you know. It's definitely a wonderful opportunity for these young children, and it keeps them off the streets, out the hands of these undesirables, and gives them, you know, a much better fulfilling life and a sense of belonging in their rightfulness in the community. And
you've been very active in the campaign because obviously we follow you and share some of the things. So, you know, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, anyone watching, please go and follow Fatima, because even sharing is huge. It's raising that awareness. But what's important as well is you're looking to have hubs in England, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland.
And a summit too, because what that's going to bring, the summit is basically there to bring the power of one. There's a lot of good people working in the care system, and they're spattered around. And what I'm trying to do is bring a summit, so it gives them a sense of embodiment, harness the voice of one, and work together, sharing and collaborating ideas and helping one another. We know that each home nation has got respective reviews going on at the moment, so now's the time to do it. And also the fact is that, yes, they've all got different child commissioners, children. They'll be in attendees, and so too will the ministers attendees. But it's our summit for our children's care sector, and for everyone that represents that sector for children. represented, but it also the platform for our young children to come and speak and tell us what they want. Because as I said before, they should always be at the centre and forefront of everything we do. And it certainly is where Fatima's UK campaign is concerned. I'm not trying to reinvent the spinning wheel. There's a lot of good stuff out there, a lot of good people out there, and I'm just trying to help to rejuvenate the care system, bring that platform, amplify the voices, and for kids to be seen, heard and valued. And let's do this together, because we want to build happier lives and better communities, and we want a nicer kind of society, and we're only going to get that if we start being smart and working together. And that's really what Fatima's UK campaign's all about. So go on my website, fatimascampaign.com or fatimascampaignuk.co.uk or fatimascampaign.com, because all those 3 domains I own, and I'm desperate to make sure, well, not so much desperate, because I want to do the right thing for our children as much as I can to protect them and help them. And I would ask you to go on my website and go on my Just Giving page, my donations, and help me to help these children change their, make their lives more meaningful in lots of ways, and make difference to their lives, because every child has a right to a safe and happy childhood.
Absolutely. And also it is, as this programme is labelled, breaking the cycle to step forward, enabling them to step forward into their life.
That's it.
So do you have an idea of when that summit's going to come about, Fatima?
I'm looking to bring that about for next autumn, this time next year.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. I'm working hard with Rachel de Sousa's office, and also in partnership with Action for Children as well, who I'm an ambassador, and working together with them. And so in collaboration, we're going to strategize. We're at that stage of strategizing now, and hopefully I've already done a lot of work talking to the 4 nations. I've been quite busy with my campaign, spoken to a lot of people, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and of course England. So yeah, I mean, the WHO cares, and the Promise in Scotland are wonderful. In Ireland, Mr. O'Gorman, and also with the Welsh. I've been talking with Rachel Thomas, and I just do believe, it's time. We're ready. We need change. We need to rejuvenate and breathe fresh air into the care system. The people that work in there, as I said, there's a lot of very good people, and they need this hope as much as our children.
Absolutely.
And the only way to bring change is to make change. And that's what I'm trying to do. So get behind me, everyone, and make sure that we stick together and work together, because I think the outcomes will be far greater for our children.
Thank you. And that ties it in nicely, because it is coming to the end, I'm afraid to say. I know I always am the bearer of bad news, not bad time, but keeping in with time. Yeah. Chris, what's your last thoughts before we go to Fatima about today? Anything you want to...
sorry, but I'm batting you to the side on this one, because I want to ask one more question. Fatima, you said sport was your saviour. It was my saviour as well, and I do fitness as a living now. That's what I do. It gave you a sense of freedom, yeah?
Yeah, of course.
What can we spell it out clearly using your words? What does sport do for your mental and your physical health, and what do you think it gives to children and young people in those terms?
Well, firstly, for me, I mean, sport, when I watched Mary Peters back in 1972 at the Munich Olympics, I was about 11, and I was starting to worry then, because independent living for the children in care that then was 16. So I was already worried, because all I ever got told was, oh, you'll amount to nothing, and you're going to end up in the ball schools in London, and it's all about marijuana and prostitution, and you'll end up on the streets. So I started worrying, and sport was, that's something I love to do. And when I saw Mary Peters win the Munich Olympics, I realised this could be something I could do. I could be self-financing them. I got carried away. I thought, I'm going to have a lovely big mansion and cars.
Well, no, you can dream.
You can dream. And dreams are good, right?
Yeah,
they are.
But here's the thing. If I want to get physically fit, I will go to the gym. And if and you train your muscles. So why can't you train your muscles in your
Yeah.
brain? The thing is, the mind and the body, as an athlete, I've always known it works together as one.
Yeah,
all right?
100%.
Right. So if it's not in the computer, you can't punch it out the computer. So what I'm saying to you is the mind and the body acts as one. And I call that the wholesome.
Yeah.
Now, and that's so important. We look after the wholesome, because it's going to serve us for the rest of our lives. So why wouldn't you look after it? Because at the end of the day, none of us, we're all evolving all the time, and none of us can live in a little construct of being that child that was in our pre-primary care years. It will do nothing for us to do that, and we have a responsibility to ourselves to do the healing, and so that we give ourselves the best life chances. And that means mental health issues as well, because I've suffered like everybody else. And I've learned to have to deal with them, and I've had to educate myself and move on from what I was when I was a young Fatima. As I said, I take her by the hand, I'll look at her in the mirror and I'll say, I've got you, don't worry, I'm going to look after you, you're all right now, you're safe. And that is so important, that you start to take that responsibility on, because even though it's not your fault you ended in the situation you were in, it is our responsibility to do the healing work as we get older. And you want to do it because your mental health, now a lot of kids in the care system, by the time, I think there's about 27% of children, or maybe higher than that, have mental health issues by the time they're 14. And that's quite a lot. And
let's be frank, the age of 14 in the care system is old by experience.
Well, you're 3/4 of the way through your life, because you're out at 18, you know. So in life terms, I mean, that's a huge, you know, a mantle for any child to carry, going into adulthood and being independent. And most average families, conventional families, kids stay in their family home up until 25. Later now, because a lot of them can't get, because of austerity, can't get on the ladder, between 25 and 30. And that's a massive change between 18 to 25 and 30, a massive growth spurt, and, you know, and skills that these children in a safe family environment get to those children that are not, you know, the experiencing that. So I urge you to think about this, you know, how important it is. If you want to try and help children, you can't give them what, you know, as a carer. But what you can do is, and we should think about this, is of having what we call a forever friend. We should be vetting people that would like to be a friend of a child, a care leaver, to be there for them throughout their years. You know, so even if basic things like filling out gas bills, or, you know, they've got a problem at work, or they just want to have a talk, because a lot of our kids, unfortunately, even on Christmas Day, are going to be sat alone on their own. It's not going to have Christmas like we know most conventional families have. These children, it's not the case.
Well, so Chris and I both know what it's like to spend Christmas at 16 living on our own.
Well, there you go. So you're understanding where I'm coming from. So
absolutely.
So I think we need to look at these people out there that have got empty nest syndrome, that have had families, they've got the love, still want to be associated with young and old go together. Yin and yang is so good, because they can learn from one another. The young keep the old young, the old keep the young wise. And I think to bring that together like that is so important. You know, I'd like to think that these children, these young people, have got someone in their lives who's a forever friend.
Well, I think that's a perfect way to end. I mean, I don't know about you, but that was really emotive today. And I'm proud to say it was emotive, because it touches, and that's what this is all about. So for anyone listening, any questions, you can email us, breakingthecycle2stepforward@gmail.com. We will be putting Fatima's links in to the comments underneath the video or underneath the audio. Is there one last thing you want to say?
There's just one. I want to say a very big thank you to you girls for what you do. You do a marvellous job, and you get that message out there, and I think it's wonderful what you're doing. So thank you for what you do for our kids as well.
No, thank you. And the last person I want to say thank you is to Maggie, who didn't intend to be part of the show, but she is.
Hi, Maggie.
Thank you, Maggie.
Have you finished now?
We have, thank you.
Well done, well done.
And thank you to people like yourself.
Nice listening to all the things that Fatima was saying and yourself. Very interesting.
Yeah, and it's also special people like yourself that has enabled Fatima to be the person she is today as well, be part of that.
Yeah. Well, it's been a privilege and a pleasure to be her mum.
Ah, well, thank you
she's
very
a ball
much.
of energy. She's a ball of energy, all right.
Yeah. Okay then.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. And thank you very much, Fatima.
Yeah, thank you, girls.
End the recording now.
Yeah, lovely.
Will
When are you
do.
going to put it out?